Mr. Pritam Singh.
I'd like to thank the Minister of Defence for the statement. Just have one clarification. It pertains to the first handout, summary of COI findings on chronology of events, specifically item number 6, where the ME Tech informed CFC Pang in a mixture of Mandarin and English that the gun barrel was going to be moved to the standby position, and thereafter the late Corporal Pang replied in Mandarin that it was fine and so forth. And my first question really pertains to the communication within the servicemen in the turret, whether the COI found language to be an issue amongst the servicemen, whether the reaction time was slowed because of these issues. And the second question is more general, looking forward. I think for servicemen who are born in Singapore, we probably understand a little bit of Mandarin and Malay, if you're an Indian and so forth, but for certain servicemen who could be new citizens, language could be an issue. And going forward, how does the SAF intend to resolve issues that could crop up where in a situation of extreme panic, language potentially could be a cause for an accident? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be careful for myself to keep to the COI's findings. I'll neither impute or raise new items because we want to keep within the remit of the SCOI, and as I said, separately for prosecutorial purposes, the military court, the Special Investigative Branch, and they decide to charge, the military court will hear other findings and decide all these factors that members of this House and others in the public might bring up. But there was no indication that communication because of language was an issue within the turret. It was quite clear to all three in the gun of the safety procedures. As I said, the COI made explicit reference that they knew the safety rules ex ante, before they went to do maintenance and while they were doing maintenance. And while the gun barrel was moved, all three were clear that no one should stand in the path of the gun barrel. And there was no indication that Corporal Pang did not understand or took a longer time to understand that the gun barrel was moving into him and he was in the path. There was no such indication.
Sir Vikram Nair.
I thank Minister for the detailed statement earlier, and I think it is indeed a very sad incident. But one of the things that is clear is that the incident didn't arise due to any technical fault, but really due to human error of three different people who were at the site. And I think any situation where people are trusted to do things, there is a risk of human error. So, and I notice the committee's recommendations are largely all incremental in nature, including the emphasis on personal responsibility for safety, reviewing the SOPs, ensuring compliance with SOPs. But then again, all these things have to be delegated to people. So is there anything we can really do as a system to try and deal with this risk of leaving people to do things?
Mr. Speaker, those indeed are the questions that as a system and as commanders we are dealing with, and that's why we start Inspector General Office. And I spent a few years as Minister in Manpower and set up the Workplace Safety Council during my tenure as Minister and visited a number of safety systems. This was following, if you remember, there were three incidents, Fusionopolis, the Nickel Highway, and these two incidents, and we undertook a safety review, as Mr. Nair has said, of the systems. We went to visit a number of other countries which had better safety records. And professionally, all the safety officers or those who have been involved with this will tell you it boils down to culture. It's just not the articulation of rules, it's how you internalize every act to the point that you take that extra effort. You can tell people that you have to put on seat belts. You can tell people you shouldn't use your handphone while you're driving. You should tell people, you don't tell people, there's no rule that you says you shouldn't look at your handphone while crossing the road. But you see people doing it. So for us, we don't have that luxury to just tell people we are an organization, we are responsible for NSmen that are sent to us. And you have to do it in a systematic way to tighten, first of all, is it lack of knowledge, or is it unclear rules, or rules that are difficult to follow? And if you find any of these, then you amend them. But ultimately, I think where we've reached is that you have to take care of yourself and your buddy. And you have to internalize this. And we found, in fact, a gap. While we are paying a lot of attention to live firing exercises, one would think that the risk assessment, that in maintenance, you don't have the high risk. And yet, here you have an incident where you ignore the safety rules and something very tragic happens. So you have to inculcate that accidents don't take holidays. You have to be very careful about the rules. The rules there are written for a reason. It is tragic. If any one of the three in the cabin, any one of them had followed the rules, this wouldn't have happened. COI stated that clearly. It's the fact that all three ignored the safety rules.
Associate Professor Walter Teixeira.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Minister, just to follow up on the issue of the safety culture, did the COI interview other personnel not directly involved to establish if compliance with the SOP for the barrel procedure, is that treated seriously? And second, did any personnel involved ever declare that there might be operational reasons to not follow aspects of the SOP? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we take these incidents and, in fact, near misses very seriously, because near misses are warning signals to us. And no, there were no reasons operational why they didn't comply. The reasons given was that they wanted to get on with it. They couldn't wait for the few seconds, and for whatever reasons. Did they interview others to see the situation on the ground? And this is what the SAF, the Army, the Armour asked themselves, and the IGO and Inspector General Office. Is there indicative of a systemic lapse? Is this prevalent? If you have isolated incidents here and there, you can fix it. And I think the sense is this isn't widespread, because this is the first such incident. When this happened, I asked, how many accidents have there occurred before? Major injuries. This is the first for 15 years of operation. And I think, this is my surmising, this has nothing to do with the COI didn't say this. I think NSmen or crew operators can understand when the gun is being fired at great speeds, and if it hits you, that's serious injury, so you better pay attention to the rules. But you underestimate even at maintenance that, how can this happen? So that just drives home the point that you have to observe safety rules there rigorously. We mustn't make safety rules so onerous that you can't comply. But in this instance, it just meant a few seconds of waiting before the gun was lowered, and we measured it. I think it doesn't take more than 10 seconds to measure it for the gun to be lowered, to be parked, as the safety manuals say, to begin your work.
Mr. Lewison.
I would like to ask the Minister whether we could use some technology to prevent future accidents, which means that we can put in some sensors, so when the gun barrel detects an obstruction, it would just automatically stop.
That indeed is the thinking. And thank the member for it's equivalent to houseproofing when a new baby arrives, right? But the big difference is, remember, that our equipment must function in war or in battle. You build enough automatic stop systems, when we have to push the button and go, we have to push many buttons to start deactivating things that we put into place. Can you do it for The training equipment, yes. And I remember when I spoke about the Barnix incident, that indeed is what we've done. We've got buttons that somebody can stop, and we've only done it for training equipment. We know the costs of the SAF, not only in terms of resources, in money, but in persons. We take it seriously, and we will design our systems to design away flaws as much as we can, always with the eye that it mustn't render us operationally incapable or put us at a disadvantage.
Mr. William.
Thank you, Speaker. I have one clarification for Minister for Defence. Earlier in his speech, he mentioned that the New Zealand Attorney General exercised his discretion and declined to investigate the incident. However, we know from other incidents, for example, Gavin Chan's death in Australia, that the Queensland authorities did actually investigate, and there was a coroner's inquiry held there. So I'd like to ask Minister, did the New Zealand AG indicate any reason why he declined to do so? And going forward, should such an unfortunate incident happen in other countries, I mean, would we or would we not expect a foreign government to investigate?
Mr. Speaker, we don't have any information why the AG did not exercise his authority to commence inquiry into the death. He could have. We be mindful that we are training in some other country and we are subject to their jurisdiction and we have to respect their laws. Different laws apply differently to different countries. I think in Australia's situation, I think I'm not sure that he had the discretion to not investigate. So in this case, the AG decided that it wouldn't, and therefore we started the COI.
Mr. Lim Belchuan.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. That was not to mean that even if they did investigate, we wouldn't have COI, but it was now, in the Australian case, as you said, in Gavin Chan's case, there were two sets of investigations, theirs and our COI.
Mr. Lim Belchuan.
I asked the Minister whether there was any time pressure on the servicemen to carry out the maintenance repair to the equipment, because sometimes when you're under time pressure, then you tend to take shortcuts and forget the training safety regulations.
Mr. Speaker, again, I will not impute any new information. The COI did not give any mention that time pressures was in any way contributory to the injury or death.